Hello, my dear friends. Today, we begin the story of two quiet brothers who changed the world forever. They were not rich, they were not powerful, they were not famous when they began, but they had something stronger than fame. They had curiosity, they had patience, and they had a dream that most people thought was impossible. This is the story of Wilbur Wright and Orville Wright, the men who taught the world to fly. Before airplanes filled the sky, before airports and pilots and long-distance travel, there were two brothers in a small town in America who looked up and asked a simple question: why can't we fly like birds? Let us begin at the very beginning. Wilbur Wright was born in 1867. Orville Wright was born in 1871. They were born in the United States, in the state of Ohio. Their father was Milton Wright. He was a bishop in the Church of the United Brethren in Christ. Because of his job, he traveled often to preach and visit churches. Milton was not rich, but he valued education deeply. He brought books home for his children. He encouraged them to read, to think, and to ask questions. Their mother was Susan Catherine Kierner Wright. She was intelligent, practical, and skilled with tools. She'd grown up in a family that valued mechanical work. Susan could fix household objects. She could design and build small things. She understood how machines worked. From their father, the boys learned to think. From their mother, they learned to build. This combination would change history. One day when Wilbur and Orville were young boys, their father brought home a small toy. It was a tiny flying helicopter made of cork, paper, and rubber bands. When they twisted the rubber band and released it, the toy flew into the air. It was simple, but magical. The boys were fascinated. They tried to build their own version. They failed many times, but they kept trying. That small toy planted a seed in their minds. The idea of flight did not begin with a large machine. It began with a simple curiosity. Wilbur and Orville were very different. Wilbur was serious and thoughtful. He liked reading and deep thinking. Orville was energetic and creative. He enjoyed building and experimenting. Wilbur was strong academically. He planned to go to college, but when he was a teenager, he suffered a serious accident during a hockey game. The injury affected him physically and emotionally. He did not attend college as planned. Instead, he stayed home and cared for his sick mother, who was slowly dying from tuberculosis. This period changed him. He became quieter, more reflective. Sometimes life closes one door, so another can open. As young adults, the brothers did not immediately build airplanes. They started with something smaller. First, they opened a printing business. They designed and printed newspapers. They built their own printing press. This taught them something important: precision matters. Later, they opened a bicycle repair and sales shop in Dayton, Ohio. Bicycles were very popular at that time. Repairing bicycles taught them balance, mechanics, control, engineering details. They learned how to adjust chains, gears, and frames. Without knowing it, they were preparing for something much bigger. In the 1890s, people around the world were trying to build flying machines. Some scientists studied birds. Some built gliders. Some believed powered flight was impossible. One man named Otto Lilienthal, a German engineer, built gliders and flew short distances. But in 1896, Lilienthal died in a glider accident. His death shocked many people. Most people concluded, flying is too dangerous. But the Wright brothers thought differently. They studied Lilienthal's work carefully. Instead of giving up, they asked, what did he learn? And what can we improve? It is important to understand something. The Wright brothers were not the first people who dreamed of flight. For centuries, humans imagined flying. Even Leonardo da Vinci had drawn flying machine designs hundreds of years earlier. But dreaming is not enough. The Wright brothers approached the problem differently. They believed the biggest challenge was not power, it was control. Many inventors focused on engines. The Wright brothers focused on balance and steering. That decision made all the difference. The brothers needed a place with strong winds and soft sand for landing. They chose Kitty Hawk, North Carolina. It was remote, windy, quiet, perfect for experiments. In 1900, they built their first glider. It did not perform as well as expected. They returned home and studied their results. In 1901, they tried again. Still, the glider did not behave properly. Many people would have stopped here. But they did something extraordinary. Instead of blaming the wind or the weather, they questioned the scientific data available at the time. They built their own small wind tunnel in their bicycle shop. They tested hundreds of wing shapes. They carefully measured air pressure and lift. They did not guess. They tested. Year after year, they experimented. Friends and neighbors sometimes laughed. Some newspapers ignored them. But the brothers remained calm. They believed in evidence, not opinion. They trusted data more than doubt. They adjusted angles. They modified wings. They redesigned structures. Every failure gave them information. Slowly, the machine improved. By 1902, the Wright brothers had made great progress. Their third glider was successful. It could be controlled in the air. Control was their biggest achievement. They had solved the problem that had confused other inventors for years. But there was still one big challenge left: power. A glider could fly only with wind. They needed an engine, light enough to fly, but strong enough to lift the machine. At that time, no company produced such an engine. So they did something bold. They decided to build one themselves. With the help of their mechanic, Charlie Taylor, they designed and built a small gasoline engine in their bicycle shop. It was simple. It was not beautiful, but it was powerful enough. Now they needed propellers. Again, no correct model existed. So they studied how water propellers worked on boats. They realized something important. A propeller is not just a spinning blade. It is like a rotating wing. Using mathematics and testing, they designed 2 wooden propellers. Everything was ready. The machine they built was called the Wright Flyer. It was made of wood and fabric. The wings were wide and thin. The pilot would lie on his stomach to reduce air resistance. It looked fragile. Many people would have laughed if they saw it. But behind that simple appearance was careful science, years of testing, years of failure, years of quiet patience. The brothers returned to Kitty Hawk in late 1903. The weather was cold. The wind was strong. They were ready. On December 17, 1903, the world changed. The air was cold and windy. 5 men stood on the sand as witnesses. Wilbur and Orville flipped a coin. Orville won the first turn. He lay down on the lower wing. Wilbur stood beside the machine, holding it steady. The engine started. The propellers spun. The flyer moved forward on a wooden rail. And then it lifted off the ground. The first flight lasted only 12 seconds. It traveled about 120 feet. That is shorter than the length of a football field. But it was enough. A powered, controlled, heavier-than-air machine had flown. 3 more flights followed that day. The 4th flight, piloted by Wilbur, lasted 59 seconds and traveled 852 feet. Less than 1 minute. But that minute changed human history. There were no large crowds, no grand applause, no newspaper headlines the next day. In fact, many newspapers ignored the event. Some even doubted the story. The brothers sent a telegram to their father. Success 4 flights Thursday morning. It was simple. No dramatic language, no exaggeration, just quiet truth. Later that day, strong winds damaged the flyer. It was broken, but it did not matter. They had proven that powered flight was possible. One might imagine that after such a breakthrough, the world would immediately celebrate them, but that did not happen. Many people were skeptical. Some scientists doubted them. Some newspapers made mistakes in reporting. The brothers were not interested in fame. They were careful. They wanted to improve the machine before making public demonstrations. From 1904 to 1905, they tested improved versions near Dayton, Ohio. They built a small airfield called Huffman Prairie. There, they practiced takeoffs, landings, and longer flights. In 1905, they finally created a truly practical airplane. It could stay in the air for over 30 minutes. It could turn in circles. It could return to its starting point. Now, flight was not just a jump in the air. It was controlled travel. Even with success, their journey was not easy. They wanted governments to buy their invention, but officials were slow. Some did not believe them. Some asked for proof before offering support. The brothers were cautious. They feared others might steal their ideas. They had patented their control system. Protecting their invention became important. Finally, in 1908, they agreed to demonstrate their airplane publicly. Wilbur traveled to France. Orville stayed in the United States. Wilbur's flights in France amazed crowds. For the first time, large audiences saw a powered airplane flying smoothly in circles. The world was shocked. Newspapers finally recognized their achievement. Orville also demonstrated flights for the U.S. Army. But during one flight in 1908, tragedy struck. The airplane crashed. Orville was seriously injured. A passenger, Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge, died. It was the first fatal airplane accident in history. This event reminded everyone, flight was powerful, but also dangerous. Orville recovered from his injuries. Wilbur continued flying. They did not allow fear to stop them. They improved safety. They strengthened their designs. Slowly, governments began buying airplanes. The Wright brothers had moved from dreamers to pioneers. They formed the Wright Company. They trained pilots. They built airplanes for military and civilian use. The sky was no longer empty. The Wright brothers were not only inventors, they were scientists, they were engineers, they were businessmen, but above all, they were problem solvers. They did not accept old data without questioning it. They did not depend on luck. They depended on careful measurement and patience. Their greatest strength was not imagination alone, it was discipline. They tested, they calculated, they corrected mistakes again and again. By the early 1910s, the Wright brothers were no longer unknown dreamers. They were recognized pioneers. Their airplane had flown. Governments had taken interest. Newspapers now printed their names with respect. But success does not always bring peace. Sometimes it brings new struggles. The Wright brothers had patented their system of control, the wing warping technique that allowed airplanes to turn and balance. Other inventors began building airplanes too. Some used similar ideas. The Wright brothers believed their patent was being violated. Legal battles began. Court cases lasted for years. The brothers spent much of their time defending their invention instead of flying. It was exhausting. Wilbur especially carried the heavy responsibility of managing business and legal matters. The stress affected his health. In 1912, Wilbur became ill with typhoid fever. At first, it seemed manageable, but his condition worsened. On May 30th, 1912, Wilbur Wright died at the age of 45. He was still young. Orville lost not just a brother, but his closest partner. Since childhood, they had worked together. They thought together. They dreamed together. They solved problems together. Now Orville was alone. Their father, Milton Wright, said something powerful after Wilbur's death. A short life, full of consequences. Wilbur had not lived long, but his life had changed the world. After Wilbur's death, Orville continued the work, but something was different. The energy of the partnership was gone. In 1915, Orville sold his interest in the Wright Company. He no longer wanted to manage business conflicts. Instead, he focused on research and advisory roles. He became a respected figure in aviation circles. He served on national committees. He supported scientific development. He lived long enough to see airplanes evolve from fragile wooden machines to powerful metal aircraft. He witnessed something extraordinary. In 1903, the first flight lasted 12 seconds. By the 1940s, airplanes were crossing oceans. By the end of his life, jet engines were emerging. He once reflected quietly. We were lucky enough to grow up in an environment where there was always much encouragement to children to pursue intellectual interests. His words reveal something important. Their success was not magic. It was built on curiosity and support. After the Wright brothers proved that powered flight was possible, the world transformed quickly. Airplanes were first used for observation in wars. Then they carried mail. Soon they carried passengers. Distances that once took weeks by ship could now be traveled in hours. Families could reunite across continents. Business expanded globally. Tourism changed. Trade accelerated. The sky was no longer empty. Human beings had conquered a space that once belonged only to birds. But there was another side. Airplanes were also used in war. World War I saw the first large-scale use of military aircraft. Technology moves fast. It can build or destroy. The Wright brothers had dreamed of connection, not destruction. Yet every invention carries responsibility. What makes the Wright brothers remarkable is not only their invention, it is their character. They were not arrogant. They did not seek fame aggressively. They were patient. They were methodical. They believed in data over opinion. They did not rush. They tested more than 200 wing designs in their wind tunnel. They measured carefully. They learned from mistakes. Their story teaches us something powerful. Genius is often quiet. It does not shout. It observes. It studies. It improves. Another lesson from their lives is partnership. Wilbur and Orville trusted each other completely. There was no jealousy, no competition between them. If one succeeded, both succeeded. If one failed, both learned. They understood that intelligence and teamwork mattered more than strength. Together, they were stronger than either one alone. Over time, the world honored them. Medals were awarded. Monuments were built. Kitty Hawk became a historic site. Airports, schools, and institutions were named after them. In Dayton, Ohio, their hometown, they became local heroes. The small bicycle shop where they once worked is now preserved as a historical place. People visit it to remember where modern aviation began. A simple workshop. Two brothers? A big dream? Orville lived until 1948. He died at the age of 76. He had seen nearly half a century of aviation progress. from fragile wood and cloth to powerful engines and metal wings. Before his death, he visited museums displaying their original flyer. He saw people studying their machine with respect. The little airplane that once flew for 12 seconds was now protected like a treasure, and rightly so. My dear friends, the Wright brothers did not simply build a machine. They changed how humans see possibility. Before them, many believed human flight was impossible. After them, the sky was open. Their story teaches us curiosity is powerful, patience is necessary, failure is information, partnership is strength. They were not born into wealth. They did not attend famous universities. They built knowledge step by step. They trusted evidence. They stayed calm. And slowly, they lifted humanity into the sky. As we close this journey, remember this: every great achievement begins with a simple question. What if? Wilbur and Orville asked, what if humans could fly? They did not laugh at the question. They respected it. They worked for it. And because of them, today millions of people travel across the world in hours. The sky you see above you is no longer unreachable. It carries their legacy.